black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and I'd like for you to enjoy, I hope, this second part of a two-part series that I asked a question in the first show, which was, why do we need Black History Month? Because it's a question I hear a lot. For me, one of the roles of history is sustaining a culture. Okay, all cultures develop themselves and express themselves to the world based on their past accomplishments from the time of that group's founding or coming together. So their history, I think it was Wade Noble said that the actions of a group at the beginning, the founding group, then becomes the history of the next group and the history of all those other groups that follow them, those other generations that follow them, then becomes the culture of a people, okay? So who we are today is based on what happened to us psychologically, economically, traumatically, and we were disconnected from a lot of things that made other groups function normally, but we survived. We clung to it, even though we might have made up some names for our children in the 70s that sounded African, but we were trying to do those things. All groups do that. And history helps a group, a culture, define its worldviews. Culture is also the way history is also the way, and the culture that it produces is the way we used to approach the world and how we let the world approach us. But if you don't have a clear and accurate understanding of where you come from, then there will be difficulties for you moving forward. I would like to start off with a quote. The last show I started off with a video of the person who said this quote, the great Jedna or teacher, master teacher, Dr. John Henry Clark. I would just like to read it again to the beginning of part two. And I love this quote. I always, every time I wonder why I study, the way I do about our Black history or African history. This quote always reinforces me. It says, "History is a clock that a people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that a people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. The role of history is to tell a people what they've been and where they've been, what they are and where they are. Yet the most important role that history plays is that it has the function of telling the people where they still must go and what they still must yet become." The great Dr. John Henry Clark. Let's go on to the next one. I want to continue talk about somebody who, because this is Black History Month, who followed that mandate that Dr. Clark wrote about, since he was this young-looking person right here, the young version of Carter G. Woodson, the person that graduated, the second person to graduate at Harvard University. The first one was, of course, W.E.B. Du Bois. But that's about all a lot of you folks talk about when I hear Black Heritage Month or Black History Month celebrations or speeches. They point to this fact. We got to understand that you don't point to history and use it as a reference. Like, he's the second person to graduate Harvard. You look at it as a resource. And a resource, that's what history is. How do you use that resource to develop you? If you have a resource of gold, there's certain things you would do. You just won't spend it haphazardly or let anybody dilute it out or take it. Our history should be used as a resource. This man understood that. That's why he started Black Heritage Week in 1926. But I want to go a little more deeper into who this man is, okay? It was over 100 years ago that Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded the Black History Month, in February of 1926. In fact, next year will be the 100th anniversary of the celebration of Black Heritage Month, Black History Month, in 2026. So that is an accomplishment. He understood quite well that the present moment is rooted in the past. So if your history, your past, is false, so too will your vision of the present will also be false. In other words, if you have a skewed vision of your history, your past, that you didn't accomplish anything, that people with your skin tone were dumb, lazy, and foolish, then you would function in a way, if you don't have any kind of knowledge other than that kind of information, you will hate yourself, okay? Your vision of yourself and the present moment will be false. That's why the ancient Egyptians would always say before, in all their temple, know thyself first. Let's go on to the next one. Dr. Wilson saw that the nature of the history that was being taught to us as black people during Jim Crow segregation / apartheid, because that's what it was shaping the perception we had about ourselves as people in negative ways. Okay? He was seeing the effect of this lack of knowledge of self. We had an idea that we were Africans, but then we were told that we were N-words. And our women was B-words. We would call each other that as it's part of a normal conversation, giving false evidence to lies about ourselves. He saw that. Let's go on. He strongly believed that one of the goals of history is to express the living present. And I got some examples there, our personal history, financial history, and medical history. You don't go to a doctor in medical history, and what do they give you? Give you a clipboard and ask you all kind of question about your past. You don't go to a bank to get a loan. What you're going to have to do, you're going to have to give them a financial history of your past. The present moment it's called the present moment. That's how I would like to call it. Present. Okay, it was sent to you by choices and decisions you made in the past. So you're always connected to your past by every decision you make, because you have to, where you park your car, you got to understand the past in order to be able to function forward as a viable human being. We kind of been told that's not necessary, or we were taught not to worry about that stuff. I'm still hearing that kind of nonsense today. That's why they're pulling some Black history books out of schools and libraries today. How dare you? You're going to tell us we can't know our past so that our future generations will be ignorant of who they are so that you can shape a docile version of themselves? That's what will be at stake if we allow that to happen. Let's go on to the next one. Now, I want to give you a little background about this man, more than just that I want to give you some more resource to give you an idea of how we could function the way he did, what brought him to become the second man to graduate Harvard University. He didn't start out like that. He was born in New Canton, Virginia in 1875 to his mother, Eliza, and his father, James Woodson, both ex-enslaved people. Let's go on to the next one. He left home at the age of 17 to first work on 3 railroads. He was following his older brothers, and then followed his brothers into the coal mines of West Virginia. Let me stop here for a minute. People don't realize that Carter G. Woodson didn't graduate high school till around 20 years old. Okay. Now, anybody else? We have a lot of brilliant young brothers who are caught during the crack epidemic or working in communities that were not economically viable, and we're looking at them as trash. He would have fallen under that same type of scrutiny. But our people understood wisdom. There were some elder men in his when he went to that coal mines. One of them was named Oliver Jones. He talked about him later on in life, about how he helped him see who he was. Oliver Jones owned a little house. Oliver Jones could not read, and many of the workers in those coal mines could not read also. But like our people always innovate, found ways, and utilize. They offered him. Oliver Jones offered him to make some money after they got off shift, and where he would go to, him and some other brothers, elder brothers, would go and have him read newspapers. Okay, they would pool their money to get together, and they would get black newspapers from all over the country sent off for them. Okay, the Chicago Defender, or the Amsterdam News in New York, or magazines, white and black, New York Times, and they would discuss what he read to them. And he's learning this stuff now as he's reading, because they knew he could read. His mother, who could not read, had brothers who fought in the Civil War, but they learned to read in the Civil War, and then they came back to their communities. Okay, we always thinking not about my individual self, what I could do for my people. They started schools, and they taught her children and their nieces and nephews, including Carter G. Woodson. That was his uncles who did that. And these black men in that coal mine in Virginia saw something in that person who was 18 years old at the time. Okay, should have been in high school, should have been graduating high school, but he had to work because of segregation, apartheid, in a coal mine. Okay, a person who came from that shouldn't be able to graduate Harvard University, but our people at that time and our community, our collective, understood this young boy, and they taught him to do that. And if he could not, if they could not get it, and they would argue and discuss what he was reading. They knew there was a financial crash. They heard about J.P. Morgan because he read about it in the New York Times, and they would discuss what he was talking about. Okay, all the things that was going on in that Gilded Age time, they were discussing. Black men, illiterate black men, but they used this young Carter G. Woodson to do that. It's found in a book, actually a children's book, called Carter G. Woodson Reads the Newspapers. And he wrote about this time and said he was very influential, because if they couldn't get a point across or didn't get understanding, they would have this brilliant kid say, go to the library and research. That's how you learn to research. That's the foundation of him going to Harvard. He didn't learn it in high school. He learned it in a little house where he got paid pennies to read to illiterate black men who discussed what was the topic of the day of that time. That's our people, collective, not individuals, collectivity. That's what our history. It's a resource to know how you can function today. Let them pull our books out of their public school. We'll find ways to teach our children. Let's go on to the next one. He graduated from Frederick Douglass High School in 2 years, in 1897. From 1897, now he's 18 years old at the time. From 1897 to 1900, he taught black children at schools in Winona, West Virginia. Again, giving back to the community, all right? Not about me. What my education do about me? It's about giving back to the community. He then went on to get his degree from Barrera College in Kentucky in 1903, his undergraduate degree. In the University of Chicago, 1908, got his master's, and then he went to Harvard University and got his PhD in 1912, okay? Inspired by illiterate coal mining black men. That is how our people survived 400 years of intolerable conditions. That's what we must learn. It is a resource, the knowledge that we need to move forward. It's where you find the seeds of hope that you could plant today, because if, like the great Marcus Garvey said, what humans have done, humans can do. And then you grow something new from that knowledge. He even went on, after Harvard, he went on to the Philippines to teach and establish a school system there for 3 years. This was a master educator, giving back. That's how our people survive. And this is what was going on for all the time we were in this land until we started after 1964, we started thinking about rugged individualism. We went from the collective, then we say, what could happen? What can I do for myself? What about me? That's not going to work when you have other groups in the society who are coming together for pieces of the pie. You can't do it as an individual. We can never survive as a people, as an individual. Let's go on. But in 1915, when he came back from the Philippines, him and some friends established the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. And this was happening at a segregated YMCA in Chicago called the Wabash YMCA. Now, when they started that little study group there, did they think that people will be doing 100 years later, we'll be having these great celebrations of Black History Month? You know, what could you do with your little group that you might establish? Because what can I do to help my people? They just did that to study their history and look what they accomplished. We call it Black History Month today. Let's go on to the next one. This is the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. And this is at the beginnings. Organized by Carter G. Woodson in Chicago, September 9, 1915, these are the other members, George Cleveland, Hall, W.B., all these brothers, okay, started that. And look what they've accomplished, okay? Not with a lot of money, not with a lot of bravado, just came together to know themselves. Let's go on to the next one. This is the actual image of the Wabash Library. Again, I don't point to it. I show the resources. I give you a resource of what history means, what history does, why you need to know who you are. This is where the humble beginnings of Black History Week at the time started. Let's go on to the next one. The Wabash Library is where the first celebration of Black History Week was held in 1926. That's where it was held, in that building that I just previously showed you. Okay, in 1916, he single-handedly, that's Carter G. Woodson, launched of the Journal of Negro History, now the Journal of African American History. That's what they did. They started putting out this book, and they will be putting out this book all the time. This is one of the original copies, the Journal of Negro History. Okay, this is volume 7, I think. That's what they did from that YMCA. So if they could do it, you could do it. Let's go on to the next one. To get the message across, this is another resource of history that you don't know. About the Black History Week, Dr. Wilson turned to his fraternity. He was actually an honorary member of the Omega Psi Phi to spread the word. It was, again, Black ingenuity. It was that black fraternity, you know, the Q Dogs, that people don't realize. It was them who spread the word and made sure that it got to all their other frat brothers, different colleges around the country, to spread the word of this Black History celebration, and they started doing the celebration throughout the country. So we got to thank the Q Dogs who are helping Carter G. Woodson start Black History Month also by spreading it throughout their organization. Let's go on to the next one. This was the Negro History Bulletin. This is what he put out also from the 1930s, through the 1940s. This is February 1944. And where he put accurate, this is what he did when he did the research. He saw all those books I showed in the last show, that he had a library behind him. And he did a lot of studies. He went around the world to go to museums, and he got facts. And this is how he funded himself. He would offer these to teachers all over the country, who would buy the Negro History Bulletin of this organization, and in those book pamphlets there were historical facts about Black people. Okay, this didn't start with black study department in college. It was black men like Carter G. Woodson who diligently found out facts about black history, put it in that Negro History Bulletin, and sent it to teachers not only in America, but in England and in France, throughout the Caribbean. And these teachers would use the information in their books, their bulletin, to teach black history. Okay? What humans have done, humans can do. Don't say you can't do it, because they were living under segregation, apartheid. Many came out of enslavement, and they didn't let the situations or the dominant groups' reasons and the lynchings and all that to stop us. Understand the psychological resource knowing your history can teach you. All right, let's go on to the next one. This is just the Carter G. Woodson home. It's right there in Washington, D.C. You can go visit and honor that black man, okay? Right now you can go. Let's go to the next one. That's a statue right across from his home, okay? This is with the father, you see, father of black history, Carter G. Woodson, all right? We have great scholars. This is how it looks at night, okay? Again, it's right there in D.C., okay? He died in, I think, April the 3rd of 1951, or 1950. And this is one of his quotes. If you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. If you make a man feel that he is inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. If you make a man think that he is justly an outcast, you do not have to order him to the back door. He will go without being told. And there is no back door. His very nature will demand one. If you control the way a man thinks by the information that is occupied in mind, and if that information is false, folks, that's why we need Black History Month. It's more than just dates and times. It's how you function as a viable human being within your group, within a society that was never meant for you. Let's go on. We were not meant to be here. I also thought, and that's Carter G. Woodson, but for the next couple of minutes, I want to give you some examples. If you want to start studying, I want to introduce you to some authors. This is the great Dr. Henry Clark. On the first show, you would see him opening the show. The quote that I read was written by him and the elder statesman. You could find these folks if you want to utilize YouTube. Their lectures and these ancestors will talk to you and teach you, at least on videos. That's how you use it. Not the nonsense most people do, but you can get a good lectures. They still exist if you want to start teaching yourself or your children or grandchildren. Let's go on to the next one. This is one of his books. Okay, I think I got a copy up here too. One of these books is one of his books. I lost it. I think it's this one. Well, this is another one of his books. Right here. Prolific writer. Okay, John Henry Clark. Africana history. Why we need, again, his variation of why we need to study our history. Okay. Now, next one. Now, this man, the great Cheikh Anta Diop, he's from Senegal. Okay, it doesn't matter where Dr. Clark always says, it doesn't matter if you call yourself from South Carolina or from Jamaica or Senegal. It doesn't matter. We were all on the same boat, and we were all Africans. That's just where they dropped us off at. Okay, they just saw black skin. But if you want to understand one of the great geniuses of our time, he was considered one of the greatest black minds, African minds of his era. This is the great Cheikh Anta Diop, him and Dr. Obenga in 1974 at a UNESCO symposium. They're the only two black faces where that were there, and everybody else was white European anthropologists, Egyptologists, and iconographers. All these the best in the world was brought by UNESCO, United Nations Education and Scientific Commission, where you get the UNESCO sites. But they were there to say once and for all whether the Egyptians were black. And him and Dr. Ubenga, through 11 different scientific disciplines, blew them out the water. He also came up with what I've said in previous shows, the melanindocious test, where you put smear some barium on that on a piece of the skin of the cat. I don't like to use the word mummy. The body, the Egyptian word is kat. And you put it under an ultraviolet light into the sun, and all the melanin would be fluorescence. And then you could count the amount of fluorescentized melanin. If it's a high contact, like I guess my skin would be like, or his skin would be like, then the Egyptians that person would be considered a black man, which they were. And he proved that back in the 1970s. Okay, let's go on. This one, and if you should have this book in your library, Sheikh Anta Diop, The African Origins of Civilization. Let's go on to the next one. This is one of my favorite too, behind Dr. Clark, Dr. Ivan Van Serter, who wrote the great book in 1976, that came before Columbus, where he proved that Africans came, and those Olmec heads that we see around Mexico, they were African. They had some kind of great impression on the Olmec civilization that they built these great heads. Okay. One of his books, before I go, I want to show you this one here. This one, if you look at the back of it, you see that that's an Olmec skull right there. Now, they don't show you the back. If you look at it, you'll see that it had African braids. They never show you that. They always show you the front. They always say it's something else, somebody else. No, they are African braids that were found. Okay, and the Olmecs lived around, disappeared about 400 BC. I'm gonna stop at this point because there's so much more to share. But this is why I've tried to prove in these two shows why we need to understand our history. We must not stop looking at our history as a reference point. Stop pointing to things. I see the pyramid, but what does it mean? Okay, how tall is it? What did it mean to the society? What does it mean to us? It should be just as important to African people as Rome and Greece is important to Europe. But until next time, peace, hotep. Hope you enjoy. Bye-bye.